Again, thank you everyone for being here today. Today, we're talking about why you're really winning and losing deals and why your current program probably can't tell you fast enough. So, with that, let's go ahead and get started. Win-loss, again, is one of those initiatives that every B2B company, I think, really believes in. I don't think that the problem isn't that companies don't realize how valuable win-loss programs are. I think the problem is actually speed. And in today's market, I think insights that are delayed are essentially insights that are ultimately at this point diluted. So let's go ahead and dive in. To introduce myself to everyone, my name is Shanu Sumawang. I am the Chief Marketing Officer here at Dito. That being said, I have spent over 20 years in marketing leadership roles, owning revenue adjacent programs like advocacy, voice of customer, and win-loss programs. At my previous company, HighSpot, I actually owned our win-loss program end to end. We actually worked with a consulting firm, and they were excellent. They were rigorous and thoughtful and extremely analytical. But even then, when I was running it a few years ago, it felt a bit antiquated. The survey was long and static. We had maybe 20 to 30 questions, and it was the same structure for every person that we sent it to. Buyers would tell us things like, some of the questions weren't relevant to their role, or sometimes it was simply too long to finish. And I think our participation rate hovered around maybe 12 to 15% at best. And then on top of that, analysis would take weeks, and sometimes it would even take months. And by the time the report landed, we had maybe already changed the messaging or adjusted our positioning. And so, again, none of it was wrong, and it was extremely valuable still to the business, but it was simply too slow. So, today I want to walk through three things: the stakes, why win-loss matters more than ever, the shifts that we're seeing in the market. So, what needs to fundamentally change, and the future of what continuous win-loss looks like in practice. And I'll make this as practical as possible because I want everyone to be able to leave with things that you can improve on immediately. Even if aren't in a place to change vendors or tools or systems, I want to make sure that you guys have some tactical tips that you can start to apply right away. So let's go ahead and jump in, and let's start with a few honest questions. I'd love to just kind of get a sense, again, in the chat or in the question section, maybe when was the last time that your win-loss report was delivered? If you were like me, again, we were running those at my previous organization, probably on a quarterly basis. I'd also love to understand how many deals have maybe already closed after that report has already been written. What's that time in between getting that closed and the deals that you already missed kind of insights on that have already closed? And how many of your buyers never responded? I think, as I mentioned, I know a lot of teams run win-loss today, at least on a quarterly clock. But as we all know, selling does, but buying doesn't necessarily move on a quarterly basis. And I think win-loss was designed initially for a slower buying world. And today, if you're learning in 6-week cycles, as we all know with AI, you are already a little bit behind. So buyers nowadays, I mean, this is what's up for stakes. Buyers nowadays complete most of their journey without direct sales interaction. We've all seen this stat time and time again. And what we're now seeing, though, is that companies that run continuous win-loss are seeing measurable win rate improvements. AI-driven analysis actually improves ROI by up to 25%. And the upside is real. Manual programs simply cannot keep up these days. And if you're learning slowly, you're also very slow to bring those learnings to the market and ultimately are slightly less competitive. So traditional win-loss programs typically have some of these challenges. Lag time, as we've talked about, between deal close and insight distribution, depending on how you're distributing your win-loss surveys or outreach, if it's manual, or even if you have a program in place, maybe taking some time to get that survey into the hands of the buyers. And at that point, you're likely getting lower participation rates. We tend to see sub 15, 10% in terms of participation rates on manual win-loss programs. Again, as I mentioned before, the program that we were running at my previous organization, we were probably around the 12% mark, but I have seen industry standards are at about 10%. I think the other challenge is that as you are analyzing this information, even with extremely intelligent consultants, they often lack, some of that business context that's needed in order to really kind of ground the findings in the reality of what your business is facing. And obviously, those insights then are living inside of slide decks or maybe PDF reports, and they are very static and often, distributed via email and lost in inboxes. Um, the other issue that we see is that it's not really intelligence, it's integration and speed that are becoming the biggest challenges here. And there's something that I think you can practically change immediately. So as a tip, again, because I think that there are things that you can do even with your existing programs. If you are sending win-loss outreach, try to do it within 48 hours after a deal closes. I think what you'll see is if you can get it into the hands of the buyer, well, it's very timely and top of mind for them. I think you'll start to see an improvement in your response rate. So, just a tip that I came across again when I was running this program previously and doing it manually. Trigger that outreach within 48 hours of close, not 2 weeks later. And when someone gets it there, I think you'll start to see an improvement in that participation. That being said, let's take a look at what we're now seeing these days in the market with continuous win-loss programs. They essentially flip the structure. So continuous win-loss programs are designed to essentially be triggered at the deal close. And candidly, as I mentioned before, participation substantially improves because, again, that's the moment at which that insight is fresh and themes are really resonant with the participating survey participant. And so themes can then obviously with AI now be tagged automatically. I think that's another benefit of what we're seeing in terms of the newer kind of continuous win-loss programs. The other thing that we've seen as a benefit of moving to a continuous win-loss program is CRM visibility. It really makes insights usable and especially for the account in which it's specific to, and gives kind of that historical context that is available to your go-to-market teams, whether they're on the sales side or on the account side of the house. The other thing that we see obviously is with patterns. So you start to be able to see patterns very early on, not necessarily at the end of the quarter when it may be too late. And so instead of learning once per quarter, you're learning continuously. And so we want to talk about kind of how we're starting to see shifts to ultimately kind of modernizing win-loss structure. And we're seeing really kind of these top three shifts occurring right now. The first is that we're seeing a lot of organizations move from surveys to conversations. We're also seeing reports that are now being synthesized and analyzed in real time, again, taking full advantage of AI capabilities to do so. And again, the third is we're moving sort of from this kind of retrospective to this more continuous win-loss motion. And so we're going to go ahead and break down kind of these three areas. The first, as I mentioned, is, again, most teams are trying to modernize by tweaking surveys or upgrading dashboards. But unless you change how feedback is captured, processed and routed into action, I think the impact still remains a bit limited. And this is largely an architectural shift and not a cosmetic one. Um, because traditional win-loss surveys rely on static surveys, oftentimes it's 20 to 30 questions, it's generic forms, low response rates, and surface level answers. And so again, for a tip for folks that are maybe running it this way, something you can implement tomorrow. If nothing else, definitely reduce your survey to maybe 5 to 7 questions, and definitely have as many of them as possible. I know we're used to, again, kind of the older survey mechanisms where having kind of the streamlined surveys made it a lot easier to do analysis. But nowadays, with everything that you can do with AI, highly encourage as many of those to be open-ended prompts as possible. So things like tell us the story of how this decision unfolded, and I promise you'll increase the completion rates almost immediately because it's shorter and faster, and you'll also start to get more of a narrative out of what you're collecting from your buyers. Because at the end of the day, what you actually want, it's not a checkbox on data. You actually want context. Again, when we ran our old program, we would get answers like pricing or feature gaps, but we rarely got the story that was like behind it. And I think a conversational approach really changes that. It AI conversation agents allow for the conversation to adapt and unfold in real time. It follows up, it probes for nuance, it differentiates between the person that it's speaking to, whether it's a CMO or a more technical evaluator. And I think that's the difference between collecting answers and then actually fully understanding intent. So again, the next shift that we're seeing is around kind of the traditional reporting. We know that again, a lot of the times it's quarterly summaries and executive decks that you go in and have to present to your executive leadership team. But by the time those decks arrive, the market's probably already shifted. Live intelligence, which is what we're again seeing in this new era of win-loss, means that interviews are being transcribed and tagged and clustered automatically as they come in, and competitive mentions can be aggregated, sentiment trends can be updated in real time. And here's kind of where like the practical application matters most. When win-loss insights come in, it should immediately land in one of three buckets. Um, Messaging changes, enablement changes, or product or packaging changes. And if the insight doesn't map to one of those within a week, it's probably going to die in the slide deck. And so with that three bucket framework, I think that'll start to kind of improve your ability to start to really activate again in as close to real time as possible the changes that need to be made based to the insights that you're collecting from these win-loss analyses. And then apologies on the other side of a little bit of a cold. Last but not least, again, most programs sort of operate more as kind of postmortems. Again, they kind of, some may even be running once or twice a year. And again, insights might be getting delivered weeks later. I know that, it used to take us about 6 weeks at a minimum to turn around some of the win-loss analysis after we would close out a quarter. And continuous listening means that every closed deal becomes essentially a signal for your business. It means that patterns can start to emerge across wins and losses, and that you're able to start to identify things like objections mid-quarter that are coming up in real time for your sales team, and you can start to course correct those much quicker. Competitive shifts maybe are also surfacing in real time and allow you to address those and counter those again for your sales team in the time in which it matters. So the system is essentially learning as you're selling, and that's again, the difference between analysis and actually making this a truly competitive advantage for your organization. And so, how Dito does win-loss operationally, it looks like a very simple flow. And so, I kind of want to take you all through that just so that you can kind of understand conceptually how we've designed this at Dito. I again kind of own our program in partnership with Laura on my team here at Dito to run this. And so this is how we run it today, anyways. Um, a deal closes in our CRM, and that actually automatically triggers Dito to deploy an AI interview. And that AI interview is sent immediately to the buyer, and there's no manual coordination or no delay. And timing, again, as I've mentioned, is absolutely critical. Feedback that's captured within 48 hours or more. Oftentimes you'll find it's a lot more accurate and candidly a lot more kind of emotionally honest. Um, so the moment the deal closes, again, I think the sooner you can get that out, the better. The buyer is able to respond asynchronously, either through voice or video. And it's fast. And again, as I mentioned, it's contextual and it's adaptive to the conversation as it goes along. Um, the next thing that happens after you've collected that information is that conversations are then transcribed automatically. And again, this is extremely important because themes can be tagged, and they're consistently tagged because they're being done by the system itself. And dashboards are then updated in real time. And I think that's what makes, again, this notion of continuous win-loss so powerful because it is able to update the insights that you're getting in real time from your participants. And from there, you can actually trigger real-time alerts to route insights, whether it's into your CRM or into Slack to notify people. But again, that insight is no longer just kind of sitting in a PDF. It's actually embedded where decisions are happening inside of your organization. So I want to talk about again the two areas that I think are really most critical in terms of kind of this new era of win-loss, and that is again the AI interview. So the interview adapts. It branches by the person that it's speaking to. It follows up when there's maybe a tone shift in the conversation, and it's respectful of time. It will inquire into how much time the person takes, but often will take no longer than 5 to 7 minutes. And so if I could redesign my old win-loss program, again, this is what I would fix first. Better signal at the source, it really changes everything else downstream. Once conversations are captured, this is the second part that I think, in terms of kind of new win-loss, that I think is really compelling. But again, once those conversations are captured at scale, you can start to see patterns emerge in real time. You start to get heat maps of competitive mentions or those sentiment shifts by product line. You can start to do objection clustering and win reason frequency. And instead of this like kind of anecdotal feedback, you're starting to see really structured trends that can be, again, updated as new insights and new interviews take place. So you're no longer guessing what's happening, but you're actually observing it kind of as it's forming. And so this is the then versus now. Before, again, a lot of these programs are running on like 6 week cycles, low participation rates, and really static reporting. And nowadays, what we're seeing is 4 times participation rate, analysis in real time, and truly measurable impact on win rate improvement. And again, this is largely in part due to essentially a structural change to the way that you approach win loss. And so, again, I know we only had 30 minutes today. I wanted to make sure you guys had at least a few tips and tricks in terms of how to modernize your win-loss motion today over the next 90 days. So here's a realistic path. In month one, just start to reduce that lag time. Again, trigger your outreach within 48 hours if possible. Cut your survey down to maybe 5 to 7 core questions, and you'll really start to see an increase in participation. For month two, start to try to find ways to centralize that insight. Stop storing it in slide decks or spreadsheets. Really try to connect themes back into your CRM so that your revenue teams can start to see those patterns. And in 90 days, as much as possible, start to activate on those insights. I mentioned the three bucket framework earlier around messaging, enablement, and product. And if you can assign owners for each of those buckets and route those insights within 1 week of detection, you don't need massive transformation to start improving win-loss, but you do need speed, structure, and ownership. So again, I know this is a quick webinar today. Again, we only had 30 minutes together, but the future of win-loss, again, really is around continuous listening and companies that are learning to listen fast and adapt fast are the ones that are ultimately going to win the day. And when authentic customer voice is feeding that intelligence and that intelligence is being activated across your business, I think you'll see that win-loss stops being a quarterly exercise and actually becomes your competitive advantage. And so if you would like to learn more about how we're doing win-loss here at Dito or how Dito can help you with that, definitely reach out, let me know. I'm happy to walk you through that or have somebody from the team walk you through how we're doing that inside of the Dito AI platform. That being said, I promise to save a few minutes for audience questions. So I'm excited to hear about kind of where everyone is in their individual journeys, how you're running win-loss today, maybe where you're starting to see the biggest opportunities. Again, feel free to drop comments or questions into the Q&A section. I'm going to open it up. I see a few have come through already. Want to make sure we have a little bit of time to answer some of these as we go through. All right. All right, so one of the questions that came through, can you set parameters around who gets the AI interview if I don't want all my closed deals to get an interview? Absolutely. So inside of Dito, we integrate with your CRM system. I would say that that's often the best place for these particular triggers for a win-loss campaign anyways. And so not only can you set it to look for an opportunity moving to close won or close lost, but you can also set up additional filtering to maybe have it go to a particular person or a particular subset of the people that were involved in the deal, or maybe you only want it to go to the executive decision maker or people that are above the line. So you can absolutely layer in kind of that filtering to the campaign so that it understands the criteria by which you want win-loss distributed in real time. The next question that came up, how do you leverage win-loss comments from reps? Oh, and compare those to win-loss sentiment from customers. Jen, this is a great question. And I started to do this as well at my last company. We actually had two things that we would compare and contrast, and it was actually really, really interesting to look at. We would look at the kind of aggregated feed on a per rep basis. We would look at the aggregated feedback that we were getting from the deals that rep had run. And then on the rep side, we were also doing what we called a sales confidence survey out internally to our sales team on a quarterly basis to understand like where they felt strong, what they felt good about, what they had resources for. And then we would kind of compare the two to understand where we saw substantial deltas between their confidence and then what the buyers were actually saying that they were experiencing with that rep. And that's how we actually would triangulate against the areas in which that rep probably needed the most enablement. So that's how we did it, again, at my previous organization. So happy to chat through kind of best practices and things that we've done on that front. If that would be helpful, feel free to reach out. Another question that came through, how do you get buyers to actually respond to win-loss outreach? This is, again, this is usually the first real bottleneck. Response rates come down to really, at least in my experience, come down to three things: timing, friction, and relevance. Timing means you're sending the outreach within 48 hours. Again, people nowadays, after a week has gone by, they've already moved on. So the sooner that you can get that outreach out to the buyer, the better. That experience is still fresh. So waiting 2 weeks to drop, you're going to see a substantial drop in your participation. Friction means shortening the experience. Again, if it takes 30 minutes or more, people aren't going to do it. People really don't have that much time. We're all extremely busy. So be conscious of how much time you're asking of people. 5 to 7 minutes, I think, is realistic these days. And relevance means adapting the questions, again, to the person that you're talking to. And the more that you can do that, the better. I know surveys, will allow you to do things like branch logic and things like that, and maybe even, some assumptive information based on what you might have in your CRM. But I think the really cool thing about AI is, at least with Dito's AI interview agent, is that it's actually looking at the person. It does research on the person, both on the information you do have in your CRM, but it actually goes out and does research on that person on LinkedIn, or available information on the internet. And then it's able to actually customize and tailor the way that it conducts the interview to the person that's being interviewed. So it's very, very cool. And I think if you improve those three variables, you will start to see, like I said, a massive improvement in participation. I'm conscious of time. I think we have maybe time for one more. And this one came in, how do we prevent win-loss insights from dying in a slide deck, or a PDF? And I think that's, again, we talked about this a little bit, but I think that's where a lot of programs struggle. Insights, I think for the most part, the most important thing is that insights just need an owner in your organization. When feedback comes in, it should map immediately, like I said, to one of those three buckets. That's the most simplest. There's obviously more complex frameworks for breaking it down, but messaging changes, enablement changes, and product or packaging changes. Again, those are the things that are, I think, going to help the organization start to move the needle initially on the things that they can, kind of the low-hanging fruit. And each bucket needs a very clear owner. If there's no one that's accountable inside of your organization within a week, again, that insight becomes just kind of informational and it's not being operationalized inside of your organization. And so, again, uh, we don't just want win-loss to be producing interesting content. We actually want it to be resulting in actions that are happening across the business. And so with that, again, we are at time. I really appreciate everyone joining us today for this rapid fire 30-minute webinar. Hopefully it was valuable. Hopefully you got some key takeaways that you can action right away inside of your organization. Again, I'm happy to chat about win-loss at any point in time with anyone. If you'd like to grab time with me directly. If you'd like to learn more about Dito, and again, how Dito can help you with this continuous win-loss program, please feel free to reach out, request a demo, or reach out to me and let me know, and I'm happy to connect you with folks on the team. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate the time, and I hope everyone has a fabulous week. Thank you so much.